All right, what's up? Welcome in. So, quick note before we jump in, I'm not going to do the whole hi, my name is TED Talk thing today. Not because I'm allergic to introductions, although I kind of am, but because I don't want you walking into this with a label in your head and then letting that label do the thinking for you, just like when you meet someone and your brain immediately does the halo effect thing. Oh, this person sounds smart, so everything they say must be right, or the opposite, where you're hunting for reasons to disagree because you already decided, well, that's confirmation bias, and we all do it. So I'd rather keep it simple. Judge the ideas, not the bio. That said, starting a podcast is something I've wanted to do forever. I just kept not doing it because of you know, serious adult reasons, like my calendar, that meeting that could have been an email, and somehow I always end up reorganizing my desk instead of pressing the recording button. Classic, isn't it? But then this Iran situation happened, this whole massive geopolitical shock, and it kind of forced my hand. It was the first time in a while where I felt like, okay, if I don't start now, I'm never starting. And if you really need the two-line version, my day job is investment adjacent. I say things like duration, convexity, and risk premium with a straight face, then spend half the day staring at charts pretending I'm not emotionally attached to basis points. And academically, my background is international politics, which is, depending on who you ask, either fascinating or one of the least useful degrees on earth. Like, it trains you to explain last week with incredible confidence, great skill, very employable. Anyway, here's the point. By now, you've already heard the greatest hits. People screaming, this is World War III, the Strait of Hormuz is going to get shut, oil to the moon, regime change, all of it. And to be fair, those are real risks, and you can find 10,000 updates a day. But, and this is a huge but, I'm not here to do breaking news karaoke. You can get that anywhere. What I'm interested in is the part that doesn't fit into a headline, the internal mechanics, the incentives, the way information gets filtered inside systems where telling the truth is basically a career-ending hobby. So instead of asking, what happened, I want to ask, how does a regime talk itself into believing it's invincible, right up until it isn't? All right, let's get into it. So the core claim you've seen everywhere. Ali Khamenei is reportedly dead after US and Israeli strikes. Still, the signal is obvious. This went from pressure to decapitation fast. And I'll be honest, my first reaction was, wait, how does someone at that level miss the exit ramp? And when I say exit ramp, I mean that moment where you can step back without admitting defeat. You don't have to mean it. You just have to create time. Because there was an off-ramp, at least something that looked like one. There were reports that the US had already used B-2 bombers to hit Iranian nuclear-related targets in the past year, and Trump publicly floated a short deadline for nuclear negotiations, 10 to 15 days, basically saying deal or things get ugly. If you have a normal person brain, you hear that and you go, okay, fine, stall and smile and try to buy some time. But dictators don't live inside normal person incentives, because for an autocrat, backing down isn't just policy, it's social physics. It sends a signal to the people who keep you alive. Hardliners, security services, the inner circle, proxies. Concession can read like weakness. Weakness turns into whispers, and whispers, yeah, whispers can become a knife. So they delay, they posture, they half answer, and they talk themselves into believing the other side is bluffing, right up until it isn't. And you see this movie over and over. Saddam, Gaddafi, Maduro, different countries, different eras, same vibe. They don't just lose. They lose the ability to recognize that they're losing. Here's the mechanism in plain English. In democracies, legitimacy is supposed to flow bottom up. Voters, institutions, loud feedback loops, messy, inefficient, sure, but the noise forces information to circulate. In dictatorships, power flows top down. Appointments, patronage, loyalty tests. Your job exists because someone above you gave it to you. So who are you accountable to? Not the public and not the truth, but the person above you. And that flips the whole information system. You don't get promoted for being accurate. You get promoted for being safe, for being loyal, for telling your boss what he already wants to believe. Picture being a mid-level official. You walk into a meeting with two folders. One says, things are going great. The other says, we're drifting toward disaster. And which folder gets you promoted? Ha, exactly. Over time, the honest people get filtered out, or they adapt and start speaking in code. And the best performers, the ones who can deliver optimism with confidence, they rise. And I'm calling that reverse selection. When I say that, I mean the system selects for the wrong traits, comfort over accuracy. And if that sounded a little abstract, let me say it like a normal person. In a healthy system, the best news is the true news, while in a dictatorship, the best news is the safest news. So over time, the people who survive are the people who tell the safest story. Okay, back to the point. You can see versions of this in China's governance model. There are internal briefings, limited circulation reports meant to tell top leaders what's really happening. The problem is, if the environment is built around censorship and punishment, even the internal truth pipeline starts filtering itself. And down at the local level, the incentives are brutal. If your career depends on hitting a growth target or keeping stability, you learn quickly what numbers keep you safe. When times are good, everyone wants to look like a hero. When times are bad, everyone wants to look like a victim who deserves more help from the center. Same machine, different story, whatever gets rewarded. Now take that same logic and apply it to the military. Authoritarian regimes fear independent institutions. A professional military with outside oversight is great for national defense and terrifying for the ruler. So promotions skew toward loyalty. Procurement becomes political. Audits become theater. And without real external scrutiny, the force can look incredible in parades while quietly rotting in the motor pool. That's why they have missiles doesn't automatically mean they have a reliable kill chain. If it sounds like jargon, it's just detect and decide and communicate and then act. Break any link. Bad comms, jamming, confusion, the whole thing falls apart. And modern air war is systems war. If your radar turns on, it's like turning on a flashlight in a dark room. Sometimes you need it, fine, but you've also told everyone where you are. Anti-radiation missiles like the AGM-88 HARM are built to follow that radar energy. So if your defenses are a patchwork, your comms are fragile, and your reporting has been overly optimistic for years, you can get surprised fast. And yeah, you'll see people online claim, our radar can see stealth jets from 1,000 miles away. In the real world, even detecting a fifth-gen jet like the F-35 is not the same as tracking it cleanly under jamming in a system that works end-to-end. So when things go wrong, the invincible air defense story can collapse in minutes. Okay, zoom out again. In older, simpler states, think early modern Europe, you could have a ruler who's obsessively hands-on and still move the system. The number of levers was smaller, but today's modern society is supply chains, banking, semiconductors, cyber infrastructure, demographics, sanctions networks, interlocking systems where small mistakes cascade. So when a modern dictatorship expects one person to be all-knowing and all-competent, you get a paradox. The system demands omniscience and then punishes anyone who tells the leader what he doesn't want to know. That's why the out-of-touch memes stick. Even if the details are exaggerated, the feeling is real. No single human can personally steer a modern state in detail without honest feedback. Now, from the outside, dictatorships can look efficient. One order from the top, and everyone moves. And yes, on simple things, they can move fast. But big decisions, often slower than they look, because the ruler isn't just choosing a policy. He's balancing a coalition. Generals, security services, regional bosses, factions, business networks, families, proxies. The Dictator's Handbook basically says, you stay in power by keeping the people who keep you in power paid and dependent. And when politics is the priority, mega projects become tools. They move money, They reward allies. They create headlines. Sometimes they're useful. Sometimes they're white elephants, impressive, expensive, and underwhelming on the ground. Okay, classic detached from reality cases. Mao during the Great Leap Forward is the textbook. Local officials reported miracle grain yields because the system rewarded miracle reports. Then the center requisitioned grain based on fake numbers, and the lie turned into mass tragedy. And Saddam is the military version. He had this image of unstoppable conventional power, and then Desert Storm happened. The gap between parade strength and real combat effectiveness got exposed brutally fast. Highway of Death became shorthand for collapse. Now, here's the contrast that helps us understand the present. If you ask me who looks the most strategically coherent, well, I would say it might be Kim Jong un. Not because he's admirable, because he's clear eyed about survival. He had enough outside exposure, years in Switzerland, according to reporting, to understand the real world. He knows his conventional forces can't win a fair fight. He knows his economy is weak. So he builds his whole strategy around deterrence and control, nuclear weapons as the ultimate do not invade sign, a sealed system internally, and brinkmanship theater, loud enough to be taken seriously, careful enough not to trigger a truly fatal response. And that's what makes the Iran story so sharp. When authoritarian regimes do things that look irrational, escalating while cornered, lashing out when sanctioned, it's often not random madness. It's distorted incentives plus distorted information inside a system where backing down can feel more dangerous than being wrong. That's the core. They don't just make bad decisions, they make bad decisions confidently because the system is designed to protect the leader from reality until reality arrives at the door. Now, what happens next? I'm not going to pretend I can see the future, but here are the variables I'm watching: succession dynamics, how cohesive the security apparatus stays, especially the IRGC, and whether the regime tightens the information cocoon or starts tearing it open out of necessity. And if you're not steeped in Iran coverage, the IRGC is basically the regime's muscle and insurance policy. If that stays unified, the system can harden. If it fractures, things get weird fast. Because removing a leader doesn't automatically remove a system. Sometimes the system hardens, sometimes it fractures, and the difference usually shows up inside the security services before it shows up on your timeline. All right, that's it. And yeah, this is episode 1. I didn't plan it so much as I committed an act of podcasting. Pure late night hold my beer energy. The kind of impulse a grown man gets when he thinks, how hard can it be? Famous last words, right? Now, you're allowed to love this, you're allowed to hate it, use whatever bias you brought with you. Confirmation bias, framing bias, go crazy. Because let's be honest, we're not born all-seeing. We're born biased. There's no such thing as full vision, only partial vision with confidence. And real quick, did you catch my bias in this episode? Because I basically pulled the most dramatic authoritarian faceplants, Mao and Saddam and Iran and North Korea, because they're vivid. And that's classic cherry picking and selection bias. And honestly, a little availability bias too. In fact, plenty of authoritarian systems limp along for decades without a headline catastrophe. So if you noticed that while listening, respect. If you didn't, welcome to the club. That's why we do this. So yeah, if you liked it, hit like. If you hated it, hit dislike. Either way, the algorithm eats, and I respect the hustle. But if you noticed your bias while it was happening, that's the whole point. Just being aware you're wearing a lens is like flipping your brain into a different mode. It doesn't make you perfect, but it makes you harder to fool, especially by yourself. All right then, subscribe if you want more of this. I'll see you next time. Peace.